It's there. Oh man, look, we're live. Welcome, fiends, to Handle with Scare, presented by the Slashing Cast Podcast Network. Our show discusses horror movies and the phobias that they emphasize. With me tonight, as always, are my co-hosts Holly, Hooch, and John. And guys, here we are, still smack dab in the middle of aquaphobia. A lot of stuff happening with these 2 months worth of different water features. We've definitely been covering our fair share of creature features to kind of like start things off. And, we're mixing things up a little bit tonight with my selection. But before we go into what that movie is, just a friendly reminder on the podcast front, we have been doing watch parties on Stream Lounge on Mondays and Thursdays. So tomorrow night at 9:15 p.m. Pacific time, we'll be watching Grizzly. That is streaming right now on Shudder. And if that's too late for you, you can always stop by on Monday for a double feature starting at 6 p.m. Pacific time. We got some Japan splatter films we'll be watching in Ghost Squad and Dead Sushi, which is one of my personal favorites. But Stream Lounge has definitely had a lot of stuff going on, and I do have to plug the Screams of Pride event that is being hosted by Ruby Tombsday. She is putting on a fundraiser for the Trevor Project this weekend, and I know Lloyd Kaufman is coming on as like a guest of honor. I will actually be co-hosting one of the features on Sunday's broadcast as we are watching Tragedy Girls for my pick, and that will be Sunday at 12:30 p.m. Pacific time, so you could join in there. But going to be a ton of giveaways. It's going towards a great cause, so if you guys can make it for any of the show-ins, it's basically going to be going on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for a good chunk of each day. So a lot of stuff happening on that front, and hopefully we see some folks there.
I got a question.
What
is Grizzly the movie about that couple that goes camping in Appalachia, and then they get attacked by a bear?
They do get attacked by a bear.
Balfour's in there too.
Yeah, it's a pretty good one. It's definitely been quite some time since I've seen that one, but they just added it on Shudder just a couple of days ago. So to see that and Alligator both hidden on there was a really nice moment, because those have been widely unavailable for a very long time.
I used to be slightly obsessed with Eric Balfour.
What is it from?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of B movies. Did you ever watch Haven?
I think I know who that is. That was a sci-fi channel.
Yeah, he kind of looks like Joe.
I think I know who you're talking about.
I think I got into him because he looked like Joe.
That is.
Oh, that could be it. So last week we saw a creature fall in love with a beautiful scientist in Creature from the Black Lagoon, which set up unrealistic expectations for scientists and their looks by far. But that's a completely other discussion. But this week, we are changing up the setting. We are getting wet and wild at a water park in Aquaslash, which is a Canadian independent film with a very specific premise, and it's 70 minutes of setting up basically the gore gag in the movie. Does it make for a good movie? You'll find out. Because there are definitely things that don't work in this movie.
Oh my goodness.
The last 15 minutes are fairly good, but there's a lot of murkiness kind of in between on that end. So with that being said, this was one of my selections, and I wanted to do this one primarily because of the premise. Because we've all seen these movies or seen these posters that immediately catch our attention. And, for me, hearing about, this movie is revolving around this water slide with blades in it, I was like, well, fuck me, I'm in. Let's see what this is all going to be about. And then, to varying degrees, there are some really bad dialogue exchanges in this movie. But this movie also has one of my favorite one-liners.
Oh, yeah? What is it?
Or of an insult of any movie I've seen, and it's after the guy gets decked, and he tells his friend, "Dude, you're built like a Swiffer."
That stuck with me too. That was hilarious. Just nothing but big old feet and just a skinny little body.
So yeah, there is that. But basically, it's a very easy setup. You know, you have all these high school graduates who are celebrating at this water park that has a little bit of a history with, you know, someone who has died there, which they, you know, kind of go into. But, you know, it's only like the opening scene. And, you know, eventually when we get to the actual reveal of the killer in the movie. But most of this movie kind of just revolves around the gore gag, and then anything outside of that, you kind of have like the teenage dramedy aspect of it sprinkled in as much like titillation as they possibly could without going too overboard with the actual nudity aspect of it. So you kind of like had this weird mix of this trying to be like an 80s retro slasher that doesn't really actually have slashing involved in it, really. But they also go like very heavy into like the porky side of things. And you know, it doesn't necessarily mash all that well together because so many people just look at this movie and they're like, well, yeah, like the actual like gore gag in it is fairly well done by the Butcher Brothers, or I think it's the Butcher Brothers, who've done quite a few movies already at this point. But everything else is kind of like fallen on the wayside for a lot of people. But, you know, this is what I like about horror. You have these movies that are extremely subjective. And, you know, for me personally, this is a good, bad movie. But I know mileage is definitely going to vary on this for both of you. So I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on it.
Sure. Actually, John and I were just having a little conversation about it before the podcast started. But we were saying how I was saying how I wasn't really sure how I was supposed to feel throughout the movie, because you get you get emotional cues based on reactions, music, some setups, and it just seemed like it wasn't exactly your slasher flick, because some of those tend to have some sort of like tension into funness kind of pace to it. This one was just kind of heavy in some parts for no real good reason, then not heavy at other parts, and then you know there's other complaints, but
it definitely had a sort of, it almost had that feel of the guy was making it up as he was going along, where it's like he had an outline or an idea for a movie and then was like, let's start filming before they had a script or
Hear
something.
me out, guys.
It's like, we can just start making this movie now, even though the script's not done.
Those Canadian tax breaks, man.
Is it a Canadian movie?
It's a Canadian movie.
Oh,
okay.
So that French dude that you were talking about, though, is it the writer or the director? Writer-director?
Writer-director, the writer-director.
Taco Bell KFC. Yeah, that's where it's probably from Quebec.
Yeah, no, I looked him up and he's done 4 movies that I've never heard of. I think this is the biggest thing. And it looks like he basically has only done movies where it's him writing and directing it. So I don't know if this is like somebody who's just sort of independently wealthy and just wants to make movies, or what his deal is, but he's not really working in the industry as far as I can tell. He sort of just seems to be someone who's making his own movies, basically.
Well, based on that, the production value is fairly high then.
Yeah.
The gore was pretty solid.
The gore was solid, and I thought the look of the movie was good. Like, the visuals actually had some style and thought to them. Like, he did some nice lighting and camera shots and things. Mm-hmm.
The color composition in general was pretty good, too.
Mm-hmm. Like, it feels like a real movie when you look at it.
It feels like a real movie.
But, and, you know, we'll get into it more in-depthly, but I don't... and I don't want to rip on this movie too hard. I enjoyed it overall. Like, there's things to say about it, but I feel like this movie looks more like a real movie than it is. It falls like short in so many ways that it's just like, like I said earlier, I feel like maybe they didn't have a script, and just had an outline and some ideas and shot scenes and had, you know, characters talk to each other.
Sorry, T. We were bothered by that movie a little bit. I was bothered because there was no consistent modus operandi for the killer. So the first killings happen with a machete, and then we're done with machete. And then the next killings happen with a gun, and then we're done with gun. And then of course the big reveal is, you know, the blades in the slide, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, they call the movie Aquaslash, but there isn't a clear slasher in the movie, which is a problem. Because
it's a chop and maul problem.
Yeah, exactly. They set up that slasher in the beginning, but then there's, like you were saying, there should have been a consistent killing style, which should have been they were booby trapping the rides. You know what I mean? Each kill should have been a different kind of booby trap and a different kill, you know?
Modus operandi.
Yeah. And the fact that the killer just pushes the guy off at the beginning, he doesn't even slash him.
I did like that the parts fell on him, you know, with the arm and was it arm and a leg? I was like, that was brutal, that was pretty cool.
Yeah, like kind of falls over his neck.
But then if you think about it, all outside of the slide kills, all of the other kills happen off camera. Like, you don't actually see them killing anybody. Like, even with the gun, it's like, I have a gun. Pan away, shot rings out through the park.
Yeah, they didn't.
And I was like, come on.
And there should have been, this movie, like you were saying, definitely wanted to be like a traditional 80s slasher movie. And I really just wish they had got, like, even though people will criticize movies for doing traditional tropes and kind of falling into traditional tropes, I feel like this movie
the tropes.
would have been perfect to just do all the traditional
give me all the tropes
that you would do in a slasher movie. Like, we should have seen the killer sprinkled throughout the movie doing little things here and there to cause the deaths, or, you know.
Also, so the killer is the female co-owner of the Slip and Slide. And, so she became a killer because 35 years earlier she saw her dad die at the opening of the Slip and Slide. How did he die?
We couldn't remember.
Oh, her dad? Well, like, I'm pretty sure he drowned, and I remember, like, they were showing like the lifeguards making out, like paying no attention to it. You know, because this movie does have some cues from Friday the 13th, including like the credit scene.
Right.
Yeah, and where the counselors are not really paying attention, and he drowns, and
and I didn't understand okay, so that happened 35 years before, but then so she got a job at the place, and she stayed at this job for approximately X amount of years, and then 35 years, which is a pretty arbitrary amount of years to start your killing spree. That's when you kick it off.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Priscilla's dad hit his head on the water slide.
Okay,
It's basically what it was. So it was like the blunt force trauma that caused the bleed in, and then he just bled out.
Because we couldn't figure out, we're like, what?
Which also reminds me...
I knew it was like an accident, not like a killing, so yeah.
And that also reminds me of the kind of weird randomness of the one death where the two guys kind of clonk their head together.
That was pretty cool, actually.
I mean, it was good, but it was
that's what you get.
But it was just sort of random. It had nothing to do with like the slasher or like a killer or anything.
I think it was supposed to be like, oh, we'll cover up anything for money. It's like, how much money are we talking about, man? Like a whole $1,000 you made today?
But I did like.
Well, hey, look at how many deaths Action Park had. They didn't close because the amount of deaths or the lawsuits. They closed because they went bankrupt.
Yeah. So I liked the element, and see, this is sort of a thing with this movie, is that there's a lot of cool elements that they introduce and then don't really do anything with. Like, I liked that they introduced the element where the owners and the old man who's sort of the caretaker of the park just don't care, and
but they had nothing to do with anything.
Like the old man's cleaning the broken glass out of the pool, and then the guy tells him something like, "Don't worry about it" or whatever.
And he just puts it back.
Yeah, he just throws the broken glass back into the water.
Incidentally, this should have come up right away.
I have to tell a little story about that. And I liked that scene. Like, that actually made me laugh when he threw the glass back in the water. And then 10 or 15 minutes, or maybe 20, a while later into the movie, I was thinking, man, like, I wish they would come back to that stuff of where they just don't care and they're being irresponsible and people are getting hurt that way too.
That would have been. I thought that same thing too when like with the bottle crash.
Yeah.
And then like the kids doing drugs. I'm like, is this just gonna be like one of those like cautionary tales where like this person died of alcohol poisoning, this person died because they slipped and hit their head. So that would have been kind of cool too.
But the thing is though, is right when I had that thought, they came to the scene of the kid and the mother on the beach, and the mother is like, "Oh, like go play or whatever, like go
Just
in
being
the
real
water."
neglectful, yeah.
Yeah, and the kid is kind of doing whatever, and I noticed that the kid had a bandage on his foot with like fresh blood on the bandage, and I thought, "Oh, wait a minute, are we missing a scene where that kid stepped on the glass and cut his foot?" Because for no apparent reason, he just has a cut foot. But then, which also led to one of my favorite scenes in the movie that I thought was hilarious for some reason, was the kid says, like, "I want to go play." And the mom's like, yeah, whatever, but cover up your foot. And so he ties a plastic bag to his foot. And then, I don't know why I thought it was funny, but the shot of the kid limping down the beach with a plastic bag tied to his foot was hilarious.
Because it's just outlining how neglectful, bad mom she is.
Yeah, totally.
Because he's like, I want to go home, and she's like, we're getting our money's worth.
Yeah.
He's like, but I got my bandaged foot. She's like, wrap it up with this plastic bag, and I go play. So, yeah.
That's what kind of tortures me about this movie, is that they set up a lot of cool stuff, but it's like, come on, like, play these things out. Yeah, like, give us the setup and like, the payoff.
Like the obsessive, controlling boyfriend that ends up being the good guy. And then like there's like the bully who ends up being an okay guy. Like, it's just it's very confusing. Or like and then
the bully who's like, I hate you, and then he's like, I like you, it's cool.
I'm sticking up for you.
Yeah.
Now I hate you.
Yeah, now I hate you again.
And you're the bully, but I'm gonna say really like things that should be getting my ass kicked. Although my favorite part was my favorite throwaway scene was when after the band plays and it gets out that the singer and the girl from the park have been doing it, and he gets punched out. She goes to look for him, and she looks to look for him in the hotel, in one of the rooms, I guess, because it's also a hotel. And, like, his other bandmate is the other blonde dude, and they're just talking. And then the other guy comes in, he's like, what are you guys doing? It's like, we were just talking.
Yeah.
That scene went nowhere. It didn't need to be there. It didn't cause it didn't move the story along.
It was like they were trying to set up some drama, but it instantly disappeared.
It instantly disappeared.
Yeah, the bandmates always fighting over a girl.
Yeah. And that's, I want to bring up, too, another thing is, like, they kind of, in the beginning, have this semblance of a story where the band is coming and they're going to play their show, and the bullies are bullying them, and they're like, oh, man, we're worried, like, we want it to be a good show. And they kind of, it feels like they're kind of setting up this storyline that's going to run through the movie. But then they play the show like halfway into the movie, and it's a successful show, and that's it.
Let's move on with our lives. I guess it's time for the water slide.
Yeah, and pretty much for the rest of the movie, the band, those two band characters. Oh, and it's hilarious. The two band characters are there, just kind of hanging out in their shorts for the rest of the movie, not really doing much.
I will say everybody was very attractive in the movie, so yeah.
And I had another moment where I was like, wait a minute, where's the third guy in the band?
Yeah, what happened?
But then one of the characters...
He just, like, disappears.
Yeah.
So Slim made it with, I forget the lead lady's name. So they had sex, right? And then he disappears. And then afterwards, because she's the killer, you assume that he's dead. But does his body come back up? I don't remember.
Well, what's hilarious is someone does ask about him in the movie, and then the response is like, who cares? Like,
but I think it was because the only reason they asked because they needed 3 for the slide competition, and so that the girl who was working could be part of the team. He wasn't there. So that's the only reason he wasn't there. Like, he could have been, like, not dead. He could have been, like, passed out in a hotel room.
Yeah.
He could have been totally fine. Slim's okay, everyone. The only reason he wasn't there was like, what do they call that? Narrative disease.
Yeah, totally.
That's when something happens because it has to happen for the story.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this movie like does a really weird thing when it comes to like the TNA aspect of it, because like they do like the whole like bikini car wash fundraising event. And of course, my friend Jessica, as we're watching this last night, is like, well, they're gonna make more money if they just went topless. And you know what? You were absolutely right. They would have probably made a lot more money. But then like they try to make up for that later on when they actually get to like the party scene, when they turn the lights off and they start throwing neon paint on everyone.
Oh, yeah.
Which visually was pretty cool. But like this is one of those movies that sprinkles in enough eye candy to like kind of distract you away from everything else that's happening around it. And for some people that is going to work fantastically. There's a lot of stuff to look at in this movie. But I really just wish that we had more kills outside of the Gore gag, because the majority of the kills in this movie revolve around the slides.
Yeah.
And regardless of like how everything's laid out, initially you didn't really know, like, oh yeah, like we're here because of like this water slide competition, because that's like the big event at this like graduation ceremony, essentially, because there's money on the line, and it's kind of like the yearly tradition for like the grad students to actually do this. But they didn't really like actually go into it until like 55 minutes into the movie, and this is a very short movie. It's only like 71 minutes or something like that.
2 hours.
Yeah, no, the slide competition should have been like the slasher stuff. It should have been
mentioned from the
throughout.
beginning, yeah, because it was like stuff
the
happening.
Big slide competition coming up.
Don't you guys know this? We've all been talking about since when?
Yeah, that should have been like everyone's talking about it. It should have been
inserted in conversation like throughout the entire movie, right?
Mm-hmm. The slide competition and the band should have been in the climax, and it should have been like the story should have kind of been going towards like the band playing their show and the big slide competition happening kind of as the climax.
Which is that right there sounds like a great weekend. Slide competition, band.
Yeah, and my theory too, just to say, is it really felt like the filmmaker wanted to make an 80s throwback horror movie and have it actually take place in the 80s. But I suspect they probably realized it would cost too much and then decided to make it more of an 80s themed night instead of actually taking place in the 80s.
You mean it would cost too much by like the props and stuff?
In terms of, you'd have to costume everybody, make sure the cars are all period correct, make sure everything is period correct, no cell phones. Well, you know what I mean? It's like, I feel like they could have pulled it off because doing an 80s look isn't that hard. But it just felt to me like this, because all the setup of the movie is a traditional 80s horror movie. And even the kind of look, which I think is one of the strongest parts of the movie, is the overall look of the movie, felt almost like one of those grindhouse movies like Planet Terror or Death Proof, where they almost could have had like the film grain and the scratches added to the image, and make it feel like it's actually from the 80s or something.
Priscilla, that's the girl's name, the lady's name.
The killer.
The killer, yeah. Although I thought it was hilarious where they made a point of talking about how attractive she is, where they're like, oh my god, she's so hot. And I was just thinking, like, literally every girl looks like that in this movie, except they're 10 years younger. Like, I didn't understand. I mean, first of all, yes, Priscilla's incredibly hot, but then it's just like, why point that everybody's hot? But
yeah, you also had the two interchangeable redheads in the movie, which was also a very confusing thing.
Yeah, and they were both one of them, that was confusing.
Well, yeah.
One of them was like the valedictorian, essentially, and then the other one was just also just there.
Like into drugs and banging like the owner of the slip and slide. I'm like, girl, you could do so much better.
Yeah, the movie felt like it didn't have a strong main character. Like I felt like maybe the one guy in the band was meant to be the main character.
The swimmer? Yeah.
Or maybe the two, like him and that one girl are the main characters.
Yeah.
But they're not really in the movie enough, and they don't really have enough of like a character arc to be the main characters.
They don't, because all they do is, they reunite after a long ago breakup, which couldn't have been more than a year. And although And then she screamed her head off for like 10 minutes during the slash scene. And then he did actually have I did like that he went up the slide to try to save people. I thought that was very courageous. I don't think I would have done that. I think I would have been very disgusted and left the pool area. I might have climbed up the stairs to try to do something, but I'm very out of shape, and I probably wouldn't have made it all the way to the top.
Yeah, and so we're kind of getting to that end part, right? Like the best part of the movie.
Well, before we do that, can I say one more thing? So the whole so lead man from the band / Swiffer man. Mm-hmm. His dad's trying to buy the park. Yeah,
that whole subplot. What was that subplot?
That was just to get another kill by gunshot off screen.
Was he like a mobster? The dad? Was he like a crime guy?
I didn't exactly. You just get the sense that he's a scumbag, but not necessarily like a mobster. Maybe just a developer. And
it's the whole like the son's gonna inherit his business, but he doesn't want to.
I don't want your life.
Totally. I want to be in a band instead, and I don't want to.
I want to be in an 80s cover band, Dad. Jesus, kid.
80s songs played as early 2000s.
Yeah, emo pop. Yeah. Which I mean, it's a thing. But anyway, but my point being that they make such a big deal of like. They show him in his fancy-ish car. He's got blueprints. The quintessential blue rolled-up blueprints.
Like he's going to do something to the park or take it over.
Oh, my God.
Well, they kind of went into that towards the end, because the plan was they were going to level the water park to, like, build, like, a shopping mall or some shit.
But Priscilla's into it, because she's meeting with him to make it happen. So even though... I mean, maybe that's what triggered her murderous rampage, because it was her last chance.
Oh, because they're going to close the park.
And she was down with it. Yeah, fucking close the park. But before you do that, let me go ahead and... No, but then she killed a developer, so it's...
Well, no, that makes sense. She would kill the developer, because the developer wants to tear down the park.
But she was into it, right? She was the one that kind of sold it in the first place. And that's how the kid got the park at the end. Because the deal actually went through, right?
Did it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he signed it.
Yeah. So the deal went through. Kid owns the park, but she killed the dad anyway.
Yeah.
But maybe she killed the dad because he was like stomping around and he maybe bumped into something that he shouldn't have bumped into. Long story short is like that whole. The only purpose of that character was to to transfer ownership of the park to the son. Mm-hmm. And even then, that didn't go anywhere unless there's a sequel.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, there's also the aspect of, the love quarrel between the water park owner and his wife, which is kind of like sprinkled throughout the movie, because like sure, she's like doing this as like a business, decision behind, her husband's back, but he's not really going to see it that way. He just sees that his wife is out with another man, because he's constantly questioning like where she's at throughout this movie. And, like, of course we have the aspect of, the abusive boyfriend who ends up like going after like the bandmate because he banged his girlfriend essentially after they've been broken up for however moment of time when all the cell phones are going off and they have the video, which this movie was just like, okay, we got like these steamy scenes kind of like sprinkled in, but then you also have like the other aspect where you're just like, man, like, these high school guys do not know what the fuck they're doing, because you have, like, the jealousy aspect of the wife who is getting dicked up by one of the students who is just, like, laying there, essentially, not really doing much of anything. And then she just lies about it later, saying how she had, like, such a great time. And I don't know if, like, that was a way for her to, like, try to make the guy feel better in front of his friends or what. But I just felt so bad for some of these characters and some of these sex scenes because it was just so fucking awkward.
Yeah, the sex scenes are pretty shoehorned in.
Well, the only good one is the shower scene, and the only reason it's good is because the lighting and
it's shot well.
Yeah, it's shot well. And I was like, was that an iPhone? Because that looks great. But yeah, you're right that they play everybody else as being like just not great at sex. Like there is no like super hot, steamy sex scene other than the shower scene, which was supposed to not happen at all. And But then they also make a point of saying that she sleeps around with some of the teenage dudes. The guy sleeps around with some of the teenage girls. So I don't understand. I don't know. Maybe it's just the something to do kind of.
I have to sort of compare this movie to the Clowns at Midnight movie.
The Clowns at Midnight, the one from the theater?
Is that what it was called? The one with Christopher Plummer and the theater
Yeah,
kids?
the Clowns at Midnight.
That we did,
okay.
Yeah. Because it has that
the
same...
sex scene!
It has...
the sex scene!
Kind of like
I thought I was the only one.
super awkward, shoehorned in sex scenes where they're like, well, we gotta do it. Like, we gotta have... but also, it's similar to that movie where there's all these threads set up. All the characters have these story
arcs that are not going anywhere.
That don't really go anywhere. And it feels like the intent of the movie was to be this kind of like whodunit almost, where you've got the slasher working behind the scenes and you don't know who it is, and you're supposed to suspect like the bully. You're
and
supposed
the
to suspect the old man,
uh-huh.
also the asshole guy who is mean to the girl. There's all these people that you're supposed to kind of suspect might be the killer.
And then they put it on somebody who has no previous connection to the possibility of being a killer.
It should have been the old man, I feel like, just for the hell of it, but I don't know.
Maybe he found out that they were selling the park and he was going to lose his livelihood.
Well, that's the thing, is it's the classic Scooby-Doo setup where that you have the park, they're gonna tear it down, and then old man Smithers, who's the caretaker of the park, is the one that's faking the haunting, or the one who's the killer or whatever, because he doesn't want the park to be torn. It should have been that. They should have just gone with the simple, straightforward, just copy what everyone else has kind of done.
That would have been kind of fun.
Because I feel like...
he also wasn't getting paid overtime, which he questioned because the other guy was, the douchebag.
Also, he randomly became a lifeguard in the second half of the movie, too, the old man. He was like a caretaker who cleaned up, and then all of a sudden he's in the lifeguard stand.
I don't think that takes, like, extensive training, though. I feel like that's like an academic course.
But I like the idea that the old guy who's the caretaker is also the lifeguard, like, in terms of the irresponsibility, like, of the park owner and not really giving a shit about what he's...
Although I did like his scene where he sees the mayhem, and he has... And that was a good way to delay his response to telling people to stop sending people down the slides, although it didn't ultimately matter because the walkie-talkies weren't working, and so he couldn't communicate that anyway. But I did like that sequence where he sees like the body parts just coming out of the slide, and he faints, slides out of his high chair, and then twists his ankle.
Yeah, that's great.
And is unable to sort of like respond very quickly, and unable to run up the stairs. But if he's in the same shape as I am, he wasn't going to get very far anyway.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking they didn't need to show him twist his ankle to have him be like ineffective in that part. He was already an ineffective character. Like he wasn't. I didn't think he was going to save anybody.
I can't win with you, John.
He's the guy. Well, he's the guy who threw the broken glass back into the pool. Like he doesn't care.
And then he had that weird little scene with the abusive boyfriend, or the obsessive boyfriend, because we were assuming he's abusive, but we only saw him being like really paranoid because his girlfriend was cheating on him. So it's like, is he abusive, or was he just being like, correct? And so he has that weird scene where the old guy goes into his car to tell him, like, hey, man.
Yeah.
You win some, lose some. And then, like, but it's a nasty interaction because the guy decides to be a dick to the old man. And then you're like, what? Why did we do this? Was this to endear someone or to...
See, this, and I have to say, I know we're just kind of laying into this movie. We've said positive things about it, and we haven't gotten to the end yet where we can be all positive. But, now I almost lost my train of thought. But, the old man, I completely lost my
So,
I have to always...
car, no reason for
the car scene.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have to, again, criticize this movie where I think in one of the previous episodes, the last one or the one before, I think I made comments about how I'm okay with the idea of releasing movies that are shorter than an hour and a half. because the hour and a half movie length is it's something that's for the theaters where they want an hour and a half or 2 hours, and they don't really want anything longer because they want to be able to turn over the theater. But Hollywood sort of created this rule where a movie that's under an hour and a half like doesn't count as a theatrical movie, like in traditional Hollywood rules.
It's all made up.
But I feel like now we can definitely have movies, because with streaming and not going to the theater, it doesn't really matter. And I was thinking, and I'm not sure if I said this, but I was thinking watching this movie, like, it's actually kind of cool, because think about all the horror movies that would actually be way better if you cut like 20 minutes out of them and made them an hour and 10 minutes instead of being an hour and a half. Especially because a lot of those movies are adding stuff in just to pad out the runtime to get to that hour and a half. But I gotta say, this movie sort of proved me wrong, because it really, like, this movie's an hour and 10 minutes, and as you said, it felt like a 2-hour movie.
Felt like Gone with the Wind. I was like, holy shit, are we there yet?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I looked...
Yeah, it's like, we don't have anything to show right now. I know, let's snort some coke off
Did
of
you
breath.
even consider killing somebody else?
That's another reason I thought this was an 80s movie, intended
so
to be an 80s
cocaine,
movie, because everybody's doing coke, which is hilarious.
Incidentally, that's not a thing. I mean, it's a thing still, but people are dying left and right, so it's not as popular anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that exactly. Like, coke isn't the popular drug in 2022.
Called meth,
it was in the
thank
80s.
you.
I know.
It's cheap.
But yeah, that's another funny thing I forgot about, is how everybody's doing coke in this movie. But no,
but yeah, you were saying like
it
this
shows
movie,
like the editing, the pacing.
But like she could have been killing more people. I mean, if you really count them, you got the couple in the beginning. You got the dad. We're gonna throw in Slim in there, even though we're not sure he's dead, because he could just be napping. Nobody knows he's dead. He's not necessarily dead. And then how many people died in the slide? We've got the boyfriend, the 3 girls that went in initially, and dude, let's add another 2 just in case.
Well, there's Tommy. He was also dismembered.
Okay. So like, but then but if we still, look at them as like instances, we're still only looking at 3 instances of murders, and it's like that's just not allowed for a slasher film.
And I want to point out there are plenty of old
victims.
There's plenty of old slasher movies that are made for super low budget. Like, you can just mix up buckets of fake blood. That's a low cost item. It doesn't require expensive prosthetic effects to just kind of have blood and throw a lot of blood around and have stuff happen that I feel like they could have kind of easily put into this movie to spice it up more, especially in the middle. That's where it sags the most. The ending is great. The beginning is actually good, because the beginning really feels like, oh, we're like...
The beginning was exciting.
Yeah, like, this is going to be a cool, kind of schlocky, B, like, embracing the B aspect movie.
Right. Because, I mean, the intro was the couple having sex in the middle of the night in a water park, which does actually sound kind of hot. They get killed. Next thing you know, graduating class coming in. Mm-hmm. Everybody's making out. There's the band. Yeah, there's the band, which is a cute emo dudes, and then you got the jockey bullies coming in, and then you got the wild kid valedictorian, which I actually I like that character. It's like she's smart and she's wild. Yeah. She's smart and she's stupid.
Yeah, she has some lines. Yeah, I can't remember her lines, but she has some funny lines.
It was I don't know. She had the 3 C's of having a good time, and one of the C's was consent. I was like, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Totally.
And
the pacing is good at the beginning. It really feels like a fast-paced movie. Like this movie's gonna. It felt a lot like Piranha 3D.
3D or 3DDD?
No, 3D. the first remake. It kind of had that feel to it. Like, it felt like we were going to do something like that.
Right.
But Piranha 3D is definitely like a million times. I think Piranha 3D accomplishes doing what this movie kind of wanted to be doing.
Yeah, that was also a larger scale too, though. When you just compared the 2 films, So basically, like, this movie feels just like an advert for Spring Break. That didn't really deliver on as much gore as what we got in Piranha 3D. Now, that being said, one thing that I really appreciate about Aquaslash is, for as ridiculous as, the writing is in this movie, they actually did a pretty good job at, like, figuring out a way of, like, okay, well, how can we explain something where, okay, someone's already gone down a slide and gotten cut in half or whatever, and we've seen the body parts flying. Well, how do we set it up to have more people go down the same trap slide?
Yeah. It has
And they worked out really well with that, because there are multiple times where they're like showing the slides at the top and you have no idea which one is what.
Yeah.
And you have like characters throwing them down and all these other things happening. So like I was very pleased to see like they actually had a reason for continuing the trend. So it wasn't just like a one-punch knockout type ordeal. We actually had multiple situations where I want to say like the grand total was like 7 deaths with the experts in the slide.
Yeah, and that's, getting to the end of the movie, that's definitely the entire movie is all about the last 10 or 15 minutes for sure. Mm-hmm. Like, that's the seed of the idea that the filmmaker had, where he was like, I have a great idea for a movie.
I get it.
And it's like, but yeah, exactly. The idea that you have this water slide, which are pretty long, so the people at the top don't know what's happening at the bottom. And keep going down, and then the guy's like trying to run up to the top, and he's like, "Don't go down, don't go down."
And then poor Big Phil is pushing people down the slides because he doesn't know any better. He's actually like literally like murdering people. Yeah. Oh. He's gonna be like.
Was it the park owner? It was sort of one of the asshole characters who got pushed down the slide.
Yeah, it was a. Tommy,
tried to stop himself.
The abusive boyfriend.
Oh, was it him?
Yeah, because he was like, "There's something wrong with the slide," and then Big Phil's like, "Fuck you, man, get in there."
and he stops himself on the blades.
Yeah, but then more people are coming down, and there goes his head.
I love the fact that when Tommy is stuck on the blades, he's holding his hand against the blade, and every time they cut to a shot of him, there's like a full-on fountain of blood spraying out of his hand on the blade.
Do you guys think that maybe if he'd gone through, like if he'd like climbed over the other bodies and gone over the little opening, he could have made it? Because I was like, you're a slim, just out of high school dude. Would you not like crawl into one of the little triangular openings? I mean, they look kind of snug, but you don't have a lot of choices.
Yeah, I almost feel like, I mean, this is just total nitpicking at this point, but when he was coming down and the bodies were already kind of partly chopped up and stuck on the blades, I thought, like, oh, he can definitely stop himself without touching a blade, but he'll have to basically brace himself against the bodies to do it.
The bodies.
Which they did do. But the hand part, I was like, "Oh, you didn't have to grab the blade like that." But whatever. Like,
it's a stressful situation, John. You can't really
put it.
Yeah, you can't.
I'm second guessing.
Yeah, these kids are young and dumb. They're coked up and horny. Like they're not thinking straight.
But I love the first couple of people go down the slide at full speed and get chopped up, and then the body parts start coming down the slide.
Yeah, that was.
And there's the one woman's upper torso where it's like cut a V on her chest. It's like her head and her chest because she went through that part where the blade exit is.
And her bottom part too. Ew.
That was definitely the highlight.
But I was going to say, you know what happens when you have a movie where a good 30 minutes of it is just filler, right in the middle? Is that it gets people like me thinking about how it looks like it's really difficult to maintain a water park. I mean, how do those guys even make fucking money? Like, it's just like nonstop maintenance, and the water's always dirty. And then you were saying how like they've done tests and
they've done. I was reading an article recently where they tested the water of a bunch of water parks, and there's just like a really high content in the water that they're finding over and over. So it's like, I don't think they are maintaining these places. I think that's why these places are kind of closing down one by one.
Because they're disgusting.
We used to have water parks around here. There were at least 2 or 3 full water parks in the general area around here that I think are all gone now.
Yeah, well, the way that they clean them is just by dumping a bunch of chlorine into them.
Well, also, even aside from, I think we talked about in the last episode, the action park and the documentary, The Real Place, that kind of probably inspired this movie and another movie. That it's not just that place. I remember several years ago, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, there was kind of a spate of accidents where people were getting badly injured or killed at water parks. And there was kind of like 2 or 3 that happened all back to back a while ago. And I think it's the same idea where it's like water parks like these are things that are kind of relics of the past where now in this day and age, it's like, what's the insurance deal? You know, what's the class action lawsuit situation where you're building this big tube and you're just kind of sending people down this tube of water?
I was going to say, there's a big one in Ohio. Maybe we should go check it out before it closes. Well, I've never been into water parks, but when I heard about some of the deaths at Action Park, which one of them, that had that big wave pool, so a lot of the deaths happen in there, people drowning in there because they couldn't get out. And I just can't imagine, it's got to be one of the worst deaths to be slowly drowning, surrounded by people who are just not paying attention to you.
Yeah.
That's awful, man.
No, definitely. But to get back to the end of this
movie, let's get back to the movie.
It does. I appreciate what they were trying to do. The ending is really good, and I appreciate the idea of this kind of short horror movie where there aren't a lot of kills during the movie, but then there's kind of this big explosion, like everything just goes haywire at the end, and it's just like a bloodbath for the last... I like that idea. I don't think they completely pulled it off really in this, but I like that concept. Although it's a risky thing to do because this movie sags in the middle. It's good in the beginning, good at the end, and sags in the middle. And but I like that idea, the ending of the just like, people are dying left and right, people are trying to stop it from happening but can't, and people are still going down the slide, and that's all good.
I was going to say that it reminded me a little bit of Haunted, the haunted house movie where it's a pop-up attraction, and the
one we watched for
right, and you know, the kids show up and they die, and so. But what I wanted to say, like, it would have been kind of nice if there was something like that intro to that movie where there's like just people working, going to work. There's 2x4s, there's drills, there's a trip to Home Depot, there's like signing of permits, you know, like just getting shit done. Because, you know, it must have taken like some work to get that little blade. Although now that I think about it, it was just a crisscross blade. Maybe it didn't take that much work.
I also kept wanting to see that kind of Italian giallo thing where
eye poking?
No, totally. They should have had an eye poking. They should have had an eye poking scene where somebody's going down the slide
with
and
the
can't
eye
stop
gets split in half.
Totally. But no. But I was thinking more of the shots of black leather gloves with like the black overcoat doing like little nefarious things here and there where all you're seeing is the gloves.
Like from the side.
Who's the killer? Yeah, because. Yeah, there needed to be a little more of who's the killer and a little more with her. Because it definitely felt at the end of the movie when they had that shot of her smile at the camera, I sort of felt like they sort of decided, like, we'll have her be the killer.
Yeah, like who's the most unexpected person? Let's give it to Priscilla.
They could have picked a few different people and had it work either way.
And they really didn't. If you weren't going to follow through in developing the characters, there's so many, like for example, the character development that wasn't even fully fulfilled between the singer and the brunette. It's like, honestly, we didn't need it, and that time that you spent, you know, developing that small amount of really ineffectual relationship could have been spent, you know, having somebody like, you know, stalk them or just showing it from the POV of like the killer so that you knew that some shit was going to go down. Because other than like the movie's called Aquaslash, And honestly, there's no inkling of what's going to happen other than we know we're watching a horror movie.
Even though it's unbelievable, it should have, like, just to sort of shoulda, woulda, this movie, like I said, it should have been a different kill. Like, I still think it could have built up to this big race where everything goes haywire, but there should have been kills that were specifically the killer setting up a booby trap on one of the rides. And then it could be like, was this a deliberate killing or was this an accident kind of thing, you know? Maybe it's not clear that this was an intentional thing because she's going around sabotaging things.
Slowly, and then the big reveal would have been.
And then she has her big plot
yeah.
for the final race where she's gonna
kill everybody,
kill everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, my other part was too, it's like, well, why would you only trap one slide?
Yeah.
I mean, sure, you eventually were going to get involved in the race, and, you know, maybe you wouldn't have known that, like, kind of going in. But you didn't necessarily need, like, 2 freebies. Like, we could have had another trap set up, even if it was, like, kind of like the Resident Evil, like, laser grid, where, in this case, it would have been more like you're going through, like a waffle maker, essentially, but with blades.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, yeah. She could have set up, like, some piano wire traps.
Audition style. Well, let's talk about some of the good things that we liked about the movie. We talked a little bit about how much we liked the production value. Yeah, it looked awesome. I mean,
yeah, the look of the movie.
I like the idea of, like, you know, partying, you know, teenagers is always a fun place to go, you know, searching for victims.
Spring break. It was spring break, right? Or was it summer?
Graduation, so what if
graduation.
It was graduation.
In May.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That was another thought I had that just reminded
summer
me
break.
is, like, okay, I get that there are shots of girls in bikinis with, like, the graduation cap or gown, but there were so many girls in bikinis wearing graduation caps and gowns, and I was like, this is not a thing. That's not a thing that people do. They don't put on their bikini and then put on their cap and gown and run around the water park like that. Like, I think 1 or 2 people doing that maybe, but not like 5 or 6 was a little over the top. But, you know, just to...
And we're all, like, hoping that we're talking about barely 18s because if we really think about it...
Yeah. It's like, some of
probably
these girls
weren't.
might be underage. Yeah. Although I'm sure that all the actors were probably like...
Oh, yeah. They were all the girls were in their 20s. Totally. I think, like, the bandmates were probably in their mid to late 20s. Mm-hmm. And then the rest of the cast was probably in their early 30s.
And they probably spent a large portion of the budget getting those licensing rights to I Wear My Sunglasses at Night.
That's
so
true. You know what? Worth it.
So they could play their one song. I feel like if this had been a bigger budget Hollywood movie, the concert scene would have been longer and we would have gotten multiple songs and we would have gotten like a kill maybe during...
And a montage. Mm-hmm. I mean, the montage that they currently had was the sex scene, right? Was the sex scene the montage in the song? Yeah, okay.
I think so.
They should have also added another montage because it could have supported 2 montages, that song. The killer sort of installing like the blades or some shit like that.
Yeah. Indeed.
Yeah, except it was just a clean cut in this situation because you just saw the blades go through, and that was about it. It wasn't like the heavy planning behind everything on that end.
But I think this movie kind of has... I feel like this movie will sort of... It has, in a way, sort of lasted. It didn't just instantly disappear. You know, it came out, I think, several years ago. I remember watching it at least...
Oh, really?
Oh, was it 2018?
Well, that's the date in the movie, so let's say 2019.
Yeah, because it was a few years ago. I think it came out on Netflix initially, maybe, when I watched it. I forget what point I'm going to make.
That it's lasted?
Oh, but I feel like this movie actually kind of clears a hurdle of being... Like, I think it's going to have an audience...
Like a cult classic.
It'll develop a bit of a cult following, and people will mention it and talk about it and recommend it because it's short enough and it has that ending and it has the cocaine and the sex scenes, that you can kind of that it kind of makes it over that hurdle of like, this is not just a disposable movie, really.
For fuck's sake, we got tits, and we got cocaine, and we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it, guys.
God knows.
Yeah, and we have a 15-minute gore gag. What else do you need?
Mm-hmm. I mean, God knows there's plenty of disposable movies that come out on streaming and on things nowadays. And this movie definitely has the look and the style. Like, this guy should definitely, hopefully, make something else that can be better. Do better next time. No, that's messed up. But I feel like this person, I feel like the guy who made this could do better, is what I mean to say. Like, he can make it. I'm almost interested to see what his other movies are, because I looked at his IMDb, and like I said, there's like 3 or 4 movies where he's the writer-director, and I haven't heard of any of them, but I am sort of interested to see what those other ones are.
It's like
I want to see what it is.
He was trying to do like a John Cusack movie that was also a horror movie, which incidentally would have been great. And like, I'm just reminded of those like ski movies where they have to ski in a race with like the rich kids in order to save.
Yeah.
That's definitely what what this kind of felt like it was going
Better
for.
Off Dead.
Better Off Dead. Thank you. I was like, say anything? No, that's not right.
Better Off Dead's a great movie.
Yeah. I know this one of these other guys' movies revolves around a guy going crazy and going on a murder spree after he was exposed to disco music.
That's one of his other movies?
Yeah, it's Disco Path.
Nice. Yeah, I want to see that.
Let's see that. I love this game.
Hopefully, I'm sure it's probably out there on streaming, I bet.
Who knows? It might be on Tubi.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll have to look.
Everything's on TV.
But yeah, so I dug the character of Priscilla. I mean, like the twist at the end. It fit her. I just wish that they would have they would have put more suspicion around her a little bit, because it kind of seemed like out of left field.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and then
yeah, like the other thing too is like with this sort of premise, it does remind you a lot of like Final Destination. Like this easily could have just been like a 5-minute like introductory type into a Final Destination movie, or just a short film just in general based off the concept. So to see it, I don't want to say elevated, but just like lengthened a bit more. They could have like played into it a lot more than they actually did. But like, you kind of like got what was advertised. You were expecting a water slide with razor blades, which they delivered on, to pretty good success. But you just wish that it didn't have to happen, an hour into the movie, where you don't have as much.
I was going to say, it would have been really fun if the other owner of the water slide, what's this dude's name? The guy who was banging teenagers?
Uh-huh.
If he, kept finding bodies that he kept hiding because they kind of looked like accidents. Mm-hmm. So, always oh no, it's the big weekend. It makes our whole, fucking fiscal year. So, he keeps hiding the bodies for the murder. Yeah. That would have been a good twist.
He sort of did that, right? Didn't he do that with one of the deaths?
All he did was pay off the ambulance. No, he didn't pay off the ambulance, the EMTs, but he basically glossed over the fact that there was glass in the pool and those 2 kids had
Oh yeah, that was with the one that wasn't an actual accident. Yeah.
So if he would have continued that trend, because if the killer for the deaths, if the killer would have made it look like they were all accidents or whatever, and then it crossed the threshold where it's they're no longer accidents, but you're still hiding bodies. Mm-hmm. And we're almost at the end of the weekend.
And then, of course, there's the post-credit scene.
Oh, yeah.
With the kid that pops out of the water, and it's just kind of
that Walkman would not have survived a pool.
It's weird how they made the Walkman a thing with him, but
it's
what does that mean?
What is that?
What is that?
80s?
80s reference, yeah.
But honestly, that's not even an 80s reference, that's a 90s reference.
Mm-hmm. His Walkman was a later one, for sure.
Because I think I used to have one of those.
But then, they kind of do the Friday the 13th ending. And he'll be the next killer, apparently, because he witnessed the murders.
And that's all it takes.
That's all it takes. But it would be cool. They should do a sequel with him as the killer, and he could have a bag taped to his foot the whole time.
And then nobody can track him because he's not leaving footprints.
Exactly. I know the irresponsible mom was a good scene.
I actually like that scene a lot because she was a piece of work. Just wrap a bag around it. See, that's why I don't have any kids. I feel like I'd be that kind of mom. We're getting our money's worth. Get back out there.
Yeah, well, that's like one of the most relatable things. Like, we all know like how much like water park tickets are, or like amusement parks. Definitely. It's an arm and a fucking leg. In this case, quite literally for the high school grads that went.
And you get exhausted within the first 45 minutes. You're like, I'm just tired. I just want to sit down.
Yeah, then you're like, I'm just gonna lay here, going to lazy river. Well, that's your day.
Yep.
Definitely.
And you're paying like $12 for a snack.
Hot dog that should be like $1.50 at Costco or $7 soda pop. Yeah. What are you gonna do? They got you. It's water park.
But it is a good summer water movie for the summertime, especially now through the heat wave.
And like you were saying, lots of eye candy.
Yep. So now we're going from body eye candy to more of a beachside view with our next movie, which is The Beach House, which came out in 2019, directed by Jeffrey A. Brown. This was one of John's picks. This is actually what I've technically have already reviewed on the podcast, but that's fine. I actually reviewed it when it premiered at Chattanooga Film Festival ahead of its release on Shudder. But this is a really interesting movie, and I'm looking forward to rewatching it, just because there's some pretty unsettling scenes with it, and there's also some weather play kind of like in some of the scenes too, which is pretty unique for the genre as well.
And some really good visuals and kind of psychedelic visuals that happen in the movie too, which are really cool. Have you seen it?
Wait, no, I think I have. That's where the fungus comes out of the ocean.
Yeah, where it's kind of like something.
And there's like
out of the ocean.
And there's like this tidbit, like tiny bit of like young couple, old couple, weird tension.
Yeah, where the old couple comes and hangs out with them. Yeah, I watched it a few years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while for me too, but I can't quite remember. Yeah.
That was one of the reasons I picked it, was I wanted to rewatch it. It fits with the theme, but I also really liked it and have been meaning to rewatch it and wanted to. So yeah.
No time like the present. So that will basically do it for us here tonight on Handle with Scare. Outside of that, I do have to mention one more thing with Stream Lounge. I'm setting up an event for the weekends in July. For Christmas in July, we're doing some holiday horror streams. Since we're at that point, at least for Southern Hemisphere. But I was just curious to see how many holiday titles are there actually streaming right now, and still a fairly good amount. So I was happy. So I'll be posting the schedule for that here probably within the next couple of days, but that will be probably Saturday and Sunday evenings on Stream Lounge. So gonna be a lot of streams happening, especially in this next month. So if you guys have time, go check that out, as well as, popping on whatever else outside of that. But yeah, we got the Beach House next week, should be a good one. And then I believe after that we have The Host, which was Holly's next pick, which been a while since I've seen that one too. So I'm always happy to dive into more Asian cinema on the podcast.
Agreed.
So with that being said, that will do it for us here tonight on Handle with Scare. I've been your host, Tumbling Drunk, joined as always by our co-hosts, Holly Hooch and John, and we'll see you guys back next week.